much. Really appreciate that. Hope everybody's been having a good time at the Grazing conference. I really appreciate the invite, and I just hope to be able to give you a couple concepts, one or two things to maybe consider on your farm as you walk away. And you know, this is the time of the year when we're really starting to think about, you know, how we want to feed our crops, and so I've got some new stuff and maybe some older stuff, but let's get going and see if any of this is of interest to you. I do have a handout. And I thought that I would get about 20 people, and I'm past that. So those that want this handout, I can email it to them. If you did not get a copy, just come up and leave me an email.
I think I calculated
this session. Let's get going. Nutrient management for the low cost producer. We're all pretty things low cost. That's our challenge. What am I going to talk about in that regard? I do want to sort of reiterate the standard nutrient management planning process, because it's something that all livestock producers should have a grasp of, and it becomes important especially now, and I'll get into that. Typically, you know, nutrient management entails soil testing, applying nutrients in some form, harvesting crops, or having our animals harvest those crops, and seeing if, you know, you get removed, soil test again, and then adjust your nutrient management plan. That's the typical process, right? For us that are in a pasture and forage-based system, if you manage things right, you can maintain productivity with limited input. That is, if you don't try to push the system too much. You try to put too many cows on a piece of ground and you're chasing your tail. You're trying to apply a lot of nitrogen to get a lot of forage to feed the cows. I mean, there has to be a balance. And that balance is basically a good knowledge of pasture ecology is the key to nutrient management and protecting the environment. So with that, let's go through the process, because you know, this is what I spend a lot of my time on. Okay, is the nutrient management planning process, and there's some of you in the audience that do have a nutrient management plan, and so this is something you're familiar with, but included in a planning process, and it's one tool that you should have, is your producer name, the person that puts it together with you, your consultant, or a person that is certified and has enough of an agronomic background to be able to look at soils, animals, slopes, and be able to make decisions with you about what your fertility plans are. A narrative that describes the farm. Maps. Maps are critical components to a nutrient management plan. You got to be able to sit and look at your fields and be able to talk to the consultant about what you want to do where. Farm location, track boundaries, where you define your management areas. We call fields or management areas. Unique features, things to stay away from. Neighbors, your property lines with your neighbors. If you're applying manures, you want to have some kind of buffer. Surface streams, sinkholes, things like that, water courses. And then you do a summary of your nutrient recommendations, what your planned crop is, a realistic yield goal, and we have by soil type. You have what your expected yield goal can be in West Virginia. And it needs to be field specific, using soil test results and manure analysis if you're using manures and cycling them using a spreader. And then plan maintenance. How long does a fertility plan typically hold up for? You know, we're happy with a 3-year process, and that's a good gut check. I mean, you ought to be pulling soil samples on a 3-year basis, or you can, you know, if you're pasture and hayland, you can probably push it out to 5 years and get away with it. Unless you get into a crop rotation, then you need to sort of reboot and make your management, you know, make your plan over with your consultant. Now, here's the last bullet on this one, and it's my regulatory kind of like wake you up moment of the day. Okay, commit to a formal nutrient management plan if you are a livestock producer, because we are under increased observation by DEP and folks that want to ensure clean water for the state of West Virginia. And you know, those creeks that run through your property are on your property, but those waters are the property of the state of West Virginia. And so that's a shared resource. And so the nice thing with the nutrient management plan is it's a testament that you are managing the nutrients and the manures and the farm as best to your ability. Okay? If you don't have them and someone comes and says, I've got a problem with that, how are you managing your farm? And you don't have a nutrient management plan, you're sort of at a loss. Okay? So let's I like schematics. I think they're they conceptualize what we do over a period of a year and how we make decisions and when to make our best decisions to do activities and not. And so it all, you know, here's your January through December, right? Julian calendar. We have you know, we're in the northern hemisphere. Temperate region, it rains. If we look at evapotranspiration, which is evaporation and transpiration through the plants, which is water moving out through the plants. Let's look at that curve. That's this one here. It's very low. There's no plants growing. It's cold weather. There's no evaporation. We're gaining in
one breed
water, and actually look at what curves. You know, we've got a big possibility for runoff. So if you want to apply nitrogen at this time of the year, you can, but you have a good, real high probability and not getting it into the crop. So you know, we have our periods of time when applications are optimum, and they are when the runoff periods are decreasing, when evapotranspiration is increasing, and at the point when plants start to grow. That's just, you know, we should have that concept pretty strong in our minds when we're deciding when to apply nutrients. Okay. And then, of course, you have your unmanaged flows, and they correlate with these high soil moisture conditions. So this is just another one which sort of gives you a field boundary and shows how things cycle. And I want to talk about cycling because pasture and forage systems are probably our most sustainable agricultural activity. And if you look at the 10,000 years that we've been involved in agriculture, our grasslands have typically been the most robust and resilient of any of our farming practices. You know, I grew up in the Middle East, and I saw places that had been you know, they had tilled, they had grown wheat, and civilizations have fallen on cropping and misuse of the land through cropping. In pasture systems, it's gone on for thousands of years. If you look at Northern Europe, they've had limited inputs and thousands of years of productive pasture land. And that's because of this very tight cycling of nutrients, with animals harvesting the plants, going right back into the soil system. You get legumes coming in and fixing nitrogen. You know, if you have soils that are, you know, in a good condition from parent material, you can keep your fertility if you keep your soil and your cycling program, you know, up to speed. So I always like to go back to like previous, you know, 50 years or whatever, and you know, things have changed. You know, we went from square bales to round bales. We went from wagons to tractors. We went from horses, you know, horse-drawn to power equipment. Here's how it used to work. Okay, here's a meadow in the background, and here's a little kind of meadow-based storage, and it avails itself to a close cycling of nutrients within that little area. Okay, you know, it's based on square bales. It doesn't work today because we're all using equipment. We're sitting on tractors. We're hauling, you know, 1,000 pounds of hay at a time. But it worked really well, you know, 70 years ago when people didn't have the resources to correct their fertility programs with outside inputs. They had their base fertility, and they kept it on the ground real tight. And you know, they hand fed back onto less productive areas, you know, and it worked. It was you know, it created a good cycle. You had your waste hay, you had your manure that was back out on the field, and it you know, it was pretty self-perpetuating. So as our farms got bigger, how do we do this? How do we simulate this on a farm now that we use larger equipment, round bales? So no crops, no rotations, limited or no storage of manures. That statement right there probably attributes to probably 85% of the farming operations in West Virginia. We feed out on our pastures or on our hayland. Farmers are very reluctant to feed on hayland. And I would say one thing is that if you can, start to conceptualize where you can feed on hayland and what the most appropriate time to do that is. And that would be in times before soils have gotten really wet and you're going to do a lot of damage to your hayland, because you don't want to have problems with your equipment or damage your hay crop coming up. Yeah. It is a great place to cycle nutrients. So with this system, we're going to use you know, temporary fence, movable mineral feeds, strategic placement of feed, hay, and concentrates to cycle nutrients on the farm. Okay, and with that we use grid technology, grid soil sampling, zone soil sampling. I think it was mentioned yesterday in the soil analysis. And zone sampling is basically by soil type. Okay, so here's a and this is in the fact sheet. This case study fact sheet. So the farmer has the best knowledge. Okay, and so he picked the spots that the zones that he had seen some things, and also they picked areas that correlated with the soil types, okay? And then, of course, this is a pond that was filled in and material was brought in, and the farmer said, I want one right here. And so grid sampling that's not a single probe, okay? That wouldn't be enough of a sample when you're zone sampling or grid sampling. This number 9 represents five plugs pulled. There's one in the center, and one, north, south, east, and west, okay? And those are grouped together, and that becomes a discrete soil sample that goes into the lab. Now, if you send in hundreds of these with your name on them, they start to have issues. But if you send, do it over a few years. Do especially with real variable places on your farm. If you've got questions about why something's not going right here on this part of the field but is good over here, do this sort of thing, okay? And here's what happens. So this is zone of this is lime reaction or amount of lime that's needed, and so this is
okay. And so
in here, and this is like 11 pounds of lime over here. So what's going on? Okay, there's field variability, and you can only see it through a grid sampling or a zone sampling process. So let's go back. What can we say about division of soil series lines? Are they very accurate?
They've come out.
They're the best guess. These guys went out and dug holes, and they said, this soil type changes to that soil type. Let's look. This is really defines a soil type change.
Rotation.
And so what they found was that this was a heavier shale-based clay soil. The rest of the fields are all limestone-affected soils. And so, again, he went in and he used a variable rate spreader truck and applied lime at the needed rates for the needed parts of the field. Now, that was a piece of equipment that's not readily available in West Virginia. You could have done it with just stopping and opening your gate a little bit, or doing a double lap in these corners of these fields and gotten the same effect. Okay, so look, here's another. This is phosphorus, and again, quite a high degree of quality. But then there's, within this field, he's been pulling hay crops, and so there's a real need for phosphorus within this field, more through this backside than through this side, and then you get right here, and he doesn't need any. So what has he been doing right through here? He's been feeding right there. Those cows have been depositing, and you can see it.
Okay.
A ring of phosphorus. It's like none, some,
incidental,
and then back in the field. And so again, you get to kind of fit where the cows are, where your nutrients are, how your hay is being fed back. Again, this is potash. It's the same sort of thing. It's there's never a perfect story with soil fertility. There's anomalies like why doesn't that look exactly the same as the phosphorus picture in the previous slide? It just doesn't. Who knows? There's field histories go back and people have done different things. Who knows? I don't know the full history on these fields, but again, it does show you sort of like a cow activity to where there's possibly more more deposits or I don't know. That one's a tough one. So, you know, strategically, how do you, if you have that kind of information, then how do you use it on the land with your feeding program? And I like this picture because this is how we should be feeding around the hills, with that ring moving all the time. Okay, just from a soil physical management of not tearing up a place too badly. Keep that moving, and then think about what you're going to do to recover that once you move your livestock out on pasture. After you've fed, you should be buying seed right now and thinking about a recovery process. So here we had a little project at the fellow's name was Mr. Sapp in Upshur County, and he gave us a field for 3 years, and we did rotational winter feeding, and we did we had 4 paddocks, and we kept our livestock at a reasonable level. We didn't try to push the system, and we'd keep them on each paddock, and it was about they were less than an acre. They were on there for 40 days, and then they moved. So they never got too trashed up, and we had watering systems within the 4 areas. But even with that, we instructed Eugene's son to like every time he brought a round bale in to move that sucker. They loafed up on the high ground. We had a buffer fence to keep them away from the creek. We had some. It was a nice practice. Come spring, it was heavily grazed down, and we had a lot of ring spots, and we did a hand seeding. We found that annual ryegrass was the best product for quick cover, and that a lot of the other grasses would come later. But if you didn't get that first cover with an annual ryegrass or a grass, you get a lot of broadleafs that would pop up. So this is the primary tool. This is every grassland farmer should have this tool in his kit. If you don't have one of these, it's probably the best $500 or $600 you can ever spend. And I really like technology, but that's about as cool as you can get. And they break apart. You can, if you don't have one, go in with your neighbor, because you can break them apart, throw them in the back of a pickup truck, move them around. They are key to getting good soil to seed contact in the spring. So what are you looking at when you're recovering your winter feeding areas and getting those nutrients to come back as a preferential plant or pasture? You want to where it's dry on the surface, but you have good soil moisture, to where you have good crumb, and that those soils break up easily as you run through with that chain harrow. Okay, let's get to the really cool stuff. And what does this have to do with nutrient management? Who knows what this tool is? This kind of gizmo. It's got little lights. It's not a game. It's not for children. It's the baby step of precision agriculture. And so I have one of these, and I'd like people to use it. And I want you to think about taking that leap and start thinking about where you are at and where you're going. Okay. So GPS light bar guidance systems are just just really a no-brainer, okay? And they sound like, well, why? I'm a pastoralist, I don't need high tech. I'm not planting corn, in rows that I need to have this exact, centimeter precision. Doesn't matter. $700-800 will get you a pretty good system. Sounds like a lot. Go back to your district and say, hey, maybe we should have one of these for folks to try, because it sure does beat foam markers or eyeballing or sore necks. How many of you have gone through a field sort of looking back all the time to see, now am I overlapping? Am I underlapping? It takes the sore neck completely out of the equation. So it tells you where you are and where you've been, and that's pretty nice. Okay, so what are the components? It's got an antenna. It's got a receiver. This one has a really nice display. It actually gives you a little picture of you, and wherever you've been, the field turns green, and wherever you haven't, it's a different color, and it shows you traveling. But you don't.
Presentation that talks about.
You can sort of set your first row, and then just get one that just has a green light, red light, and if you just veer off too much, it'll tell you red light and come back left, or you go the other way, it'll tell you to come back the other way. Pretty nifty stuff, okay? What would you use it for? Why do I need that kind of accuracy? Well, of course, if you're doing crop sprays, that was the first adoption, was guys in spray rigs that were like, okay, I went through the field, now where do I line up next? And so they had big old booms, and it's really hard to gauge, okay? But it works for everything: lime spreaders, fertilizer, manure, tillage. If you have a big field and you've had 40 cows out on it and you've fed all across it, and you want to take your tractor and you want to put some tillage to spread the manure or whatever, it's nice to be able to not have to be looking over your back and saying, have I covered that or not? I mean, look at diesel prices, almost $5 a gallon. Do you want to use as little diesel as you can to do that activity? Sure you do. Okay? Frost seeding. Frost seeding is something that, what about last night? Wow, that was really great. I got up this morning, it was 23 degrees. So I walked back, and the soil moisture is so good that it was like walking on just this crusty, and I thought, wow, I wish I had gotten some clover seed out in the last 2 days, So frost seeding, again, when you spread that clover, can you see where you've been? You can if you've got a guidance system. Just makes sense, okay? And here's your choices. You either pick a side of the field and you go A to B, and once you've hit, you hit the first button, you go down, you get to the end of the field, you hit B. After that, you're done. You turn and it tells you go exactly first beside where you've been. If there's a tree, like right here, then it'll tell you to make that turn each time. And it just saves on everything. Saves on fuel, saves on fertilizer. The only thing you need to do is you need to be able to understand what your width of application is and set that in your system, and then you can go. Let's talk about some other tools that are sort of increase your management abilities. I know we're not all into corn silage. These tools are mostly nitrogen management, from organic nitrogen manure applications. If that's not of interest, at least I've hopefully captured your imagination about guidance system in the last few minutes. The first one that I'll talk about is pre-side dress nitrate test. We'll talk about chlorophyll meters, end of season stock nitrate test, green index, which is another one if anybody's a corn producer that uses manure. This is a really cool product that I'd like to get out and be evaluated.
The temperature is...
So the first one, pre-side dress nitrogen test. Again, it's a soil test. You go in when corn is 7 to 16 inches tall, and you have to go through and pull at optimum 12-inch samples and just dry them like you would. Send them to a lab is best, or you can use little handheld meters to determine if you need any additional nitrogen. And then you have the opportunity to apply any additional nitrogen to meet the crop, the corn crop. Yes?
Some noise.
It's very difficult. And this is just there's a whole series of
System. First of all,
start thinking that way. It's on how can we adapt this to pasture or forage systems. The chlorophyll meter was tried. It's a system where you have to set up an optimum strip in your field so that you get as much nitrogen as that plant can take up, and then you compare that with the rest of the field. So you have, as dark a leaf as possibly you can have against what you've applied at what you think is the right rate. Kind of an expensive tool, never really took off. End of season stock nitrate test is, I really like it. It costs, the test costs about $10. You send the stocks to Penn State lab. It's a time of the year when you're not in a rush. You're getting ready to harvest, and you cut these stalks, and what do you see? Well, if you have a high amount of nitrogen, you can kind of look back and say, historically, I've been putting more manure on that field than I need. But if you get down into numbers like this, on these samples all were that less than 1,000 milligrams of nitrate per kilogram of stock. That tells you that you had not hit your optimum or your yield goal. So these are you can either use tools to tell you what your nitrogen status is right now, or you can have them that like look back and tell you what your nitrogen source was over the season. So it's kind of neat. Here's a really neat one that I'm gonna buy a few of these for county faculty this summer, and it's based on a smartphone app. So anybody with an old dumb phone, throw it away. There's real reasons to have a smartphone, okay? And it's a digital phone app. It costs about $100. It measures the greenness of the corn, okay? And you use the digital camera on the phone. Every phone's got a camera. And the cool part is that you take a picture of that leaf, and it sends sends it up to the nitrogen gods, and it comes back with a recommendation.
Cool.
Wow!
Okay.
And you're still standing in the field. You haven't gone anywhere, you know? And so so these are reference points. So, you know, it's like everything. You're on a shady day, you're on a sunny day. You're with this corn variety, you're with that corn variety, okay? So, you know,
A very
different
period of time.
for it to correlate that greenness against. So they've got a green disc and a yellow disc to kind of tell you if you're, you know, in a highlight period or a low light period. It's a cool. Now, if we could get this for forages, I think that would, you know, it's just, you know, the money's not there to do that kind of research. The money's really there for nitrogen management in corn. So it's called the Digital Dark Green Color Index, coming to a smartphone now. So if anybody's out there and is interested in that, if anybody's interested in this, in trying out this guidance system, I had a gentleman in Greenbrier County, a dairyman, play around with it last fall, you know, he's interested in using it again this summer to apply barnyard manure.
Follow me?
Uh-oh. So what's next? So consider adding technology to improve your nutrient management plan, okay? And this is what a consultant said to me. If you're over 40, look for someone to help. And usually the greatest thing I went and talked to a farmer I'd worked with years ago, and he bought a brand new baler. And I said, how do you like that new ground baler? He says, you know, only the 17-year-old knows how to work it.
68%.
Because they know how to punch buttons.
On that.
So, some people say if they're over 40, don't even talk to them about this technology because it just terrify them. But I think that we got to get past that. Guidance systems are a no-brainer. They are just a no-brainer. And they move from tractor to tractor. Mine is set up with quick couplers to grab onto parts of the tractor so you can take it and move it from place to place. Grid or zoned soil sampling gives you a really nice picture of field variability. If you've got a field and you've fed over the years and you if you read this fact sheet,
here, but
you'll see that where he took standard soil sampling, it called for no fertilizer. And then he did these grid samples, and it was like, wait a second, that standard soil sample where you just go through the field was in error. Actually, there were places in the field that needed lime, that needed phosphorus, that needed potash. So I'm looking for farmers in West Virginia to test my toys. And I really appreciate your attention. And I just wanted to leave you with a place I visited last fall, which I think just sums up where we live and what a beautiful state we live in. This is a stunning part of West Virginia. If you have a chance to drive through the Sinks of Gandy in Randolph County, stop what you're doing and go do it because it's just amazing. It's a natural grassland area. It's God-giving grassland. So with that, if you got questions.
One of the questions I had, you had some side grass,
Yeah.
and that gives you the nitrate, essentially the nitrate still at that time, right?
Right.
Is there any kind of kits that you can test the potential nitrogen release of the drones? So you know what I'm saying, that
like early season.
Well, something we could test the soil with that will tell us that over this growing season we could expect, say, a release of 80 pounds of nitrogen or 100 pounds of nitrogen.
Yeah, that's the problem. We have to wait for soils to warm up, to become biologically active, to take that PSNT, because that really tells us what the status is, or we have to use a fall test and look at a plant part to really tell you what was seasonally available over that growing season. We really don't have a good tool up front. And they tried in Iowa for a number of years to come up with a soil test in the spring for nitrogen. There's just not good microbial activity to let you know what's there and what's available.
Did you take a soil sample and incubate it in the lab and measure, say, carbon dioxide release or something?
Don't know.
On this technology you have here,
Yeah.
is it just before the tractors get down through the field, or it's like they're spreading fertilizer? Does it show your outer edge before you spread your fertilizer?
It shows you the width of your spread. So yes. So when you get on this thing and you boot it up and hook it up to the battery, it'll come on and it'll start asking you questions, and it'll say what's what's the length of where's the antenna in relation to your spreader width. So you measure that, and it's like how big of a spreader width. So you got to do some calibration basics. You got to put some pans out in the field, and you got to run your spreader, and you got to, okay, I'm here. I've got 15 feet. Spreading is a crown, right? And it falls off. So you're going to say, I want a 5-foot overlap so that I get those two parts to come together and have as even an application. You take that into consideration, put your measurements in, and go. It's really nice. It kind of takes, and then this one's got a little port, and you put your jump drive in it, and it tells you where you have been on Earth, and you take it back to your computer, and you say, you name it. It's name the activity, and you have that record of that part of your nutrient management plan or whatever, whether I frost seeded, this date, and you have it, exactly where on the field you did it, and where you don't need to do it next year if you've got a good response to that frost seeding. Very exciting stuff, I think. And and it's not, $800 is a big investment, but those satellites are up there. It's a very robust system. We're going to be using GPS from here on out. The government's going to support it. It gets more refined all the time, and the technology cheapens up all the time.
You have to buy a subscription for real-time correction.
Well, not for what we're doing here on a pasture hayland basis. If you are down to the centimeter level, then yeah, you're looking at that kind of accuracy. Having a subscription, or you're doing research, then yes, you want to get right down. I mean, you got to understand that corn producers in the Midwest are not planting any corn in their hedgerows anymore. Those planters, as soon as they hit that hedgerow, they turn off.
And they're consistently in the 13.
And it's and the funny thing with variable rate technology, this consultant I know, he said you got to get the farmer in the truck and have him watch that as it comes to the end of the field, and the gate's shut and everything shuts down. And Tim's like saying, I didn't touch anything. That computer was telling the truck what to do. And at that moment, then the farmer's like, oh my God, this is a whole new world on applying nutrients. Yeah, then it'll open right back up and it'll go. And if it needs 3 tons in this part of the field, the gate will open and it'll close down as it hits that next part of the field map that shows a lesser need. That's a chicken and egg part. We've got people that are doing grid sampling, but they're having tough time finding ag suppliers that will come up to the speed to offer variable rate spreading.
Do you have a grid size defined that people need to be using?
Again, I think we can be more forgiving for pasture and hay systems, but I mean, don't flood the lab. But we're looking at like 2.5 acre grids. I mean, we've got small fields anyway. So, and everybody used to say, "Oh, precision ag won't work in these small fields." Heck, we got more variability than you can shake a stick at. Yes, small fields have shown to be very good for this kind of use of sampling technique.
We have a co-op in south side of Virginia that's doing this precision application on that. The producers are absolutely amazed. Like, they'll pull into a pasture and he'll drive over the corner, spread a little bit of lime, and then leave that pasture. So instead of applying lime to the whole pasture, you just hit that corner that redid the lime, and that's a big cost saving for those producers.
Mm-hmm.
Can't remember what they're charging, but it's not outrageous to have a system.
Yeah. So it's, as you ag producers, you got to go to your suppliers and say, this is technology that I want. I've got, I'm willing to take the time to do grid sampling and have a variable field fertility map produced. Belly up and help me apply those nutrients that I need in the places that I need it, instead of just everywhere.
We've heard a lot of about
Yeah, do it at the same time that you always do it. That's the key. It's like, okay, I'll go back to give the guys in the soil lab a break. Do it late fall. That's nice. I mean, you want to do it when soil conditions are good, when soil moisture conditions are at optimum, or maybe a little dry, not too dry, to where and buy a probe. Don't just that's your. I mean, these are nice, but a soil probe is hands down the best piece of equipment you could ever buy. Perfect. Yep. Yeah, that's a great question. Are you familiar with Web Soil Survey? So go home and plug that into your computer and hit enter, and you can generate your own. It's all pretty much orthophotography at this point, right? And then you can put a soils layer on that, and you can start thinking about, wow. I don't have that good of a production in that part of the field. Maybe it's a soils issue. So yeah, use Web Soil Survey. What's the caveat? Everybody loves it. So don't try to get on it during lunch, because everybody and their brother are using it. It's a real popular site. Realtors found it, and they're just crazy about it. 5 minutes?
Get 'em.
Part of your problem is not the condition of the soil. Some fields where we have soil that's compacted, we have a clay type of soil, and the nutrients will be different there. It's more of a function of how the soil is. Might be better off spending time on a chisel plow coming in, chisel, and then underpinning up.
I said that.
That's right.
Does that point out you part of the field?
So,
Compacted or compacted, and maybe you can 1 inch down below the soil.
in pulling